Welcome to another episode of Abuse Recovery Success, and boy, are you in for a treat. Today I have kind of the first time we've ever done double guests, and you're in store for some interesting times because we've got double the Kyles. So without further ado, my bright lights, here are the Kyles. Kyles, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's so exciting to kind of have viewed a little bit of your social media. That's a big part of how me and my team find some of our guests. We try to follow people that identify with what abuse recovery success is all about. And at the end of the day, what I saw from you guys was exactly that. So I want you to really share with the listeners each of your stories of journey and hope and strength and maybe some of the darkness as well. So I will not pick. I'll let you guys pick who's going first.
We'll go young, age before beauty, apparently. So my name's Kyle, and as far as my story is concerned, I was born in Flint, Michigan. My parents moved out here in early 90s. My dad worked for Buick, my grandpa worked for Buick, and that's what we did. My dad saw a lot of things going on in General Motors in general and moved us out here and started a business. So we went from a pretty stable household to a household where we were, I didn't know this growing up, but we were just broke. We were poor, and we didn't have a ton. I remember just small things that kind of showed me that my parents would go to Mexico to pick up medications and things like that, but as far as my childhood was great. My parents both loved me. I come from a divorced family, and really that's where, things got off for me. Was a very extroverted young kid, I was just, remember wanting to run around and go and just be relational. And my parents divorced, really I just saw things that you probably shouldn't see as a kid, and that took me to a place where I just kind of went inside. I just retracted into myself, and I developed so many unhealthy behaviors, and that was just a result to try to protect myself, and I was trying to protect myself from just the pain, the hurt, all the things that had gone on. And it's my life was so stable, and I had a stay-at-home mom, and my dad, was there for sports, and and then all of a sudden, it was just the standard, American family, where at the same point, my dad's business did well, and my mom was thrown into the work environment, right? And so I had to become the strong one for my mom. I remember times where my mom was just in my bed. I remember she was burning heaters Marlboro Reds, and as this is not my mom, I remember going out to the pool and just being what's going on? And my mom was just falling apart, and that turned into a lot of struggle, and that turned into a lot of anger coming out of me. I was in a lot of ways, I just did a lot of things that I wasn't proud of. I was the type of person that was just kind of chop you and beneath the legs and do things that, and it was done to me too, those types of things. And just things that I look back on. I remember just having certain instances in my childhood where groups of people kind of ganged up on me, and just it just makes you feel so alone and by yourself. And really, I remember growing up and having times in my life where, especially when I hit 18, I was always really I would err in the gifted side, but I didn't have any work ethic because I could pick up things and do them at a higher level. And I got into real world life, and it was just man, I don't know where I'm at, what I'm doing, how I got here. And that's really where drugs really entered my life. I was a big athlete, and sports was a big part of just my day-to-day life. And every athlete that ever has, competed, you lose sports and you lose a part of your identity, and really the identity is a huge part for me, as far as who am I and what am I doing? And ultimately I found my identity in all kinds of things that didn't fulfill me, right? My identity was in who I was, or if I was, doing well in sports, or, if I was getting gratification from, people, and looking for that and really finding meaning in that, and then all of a sudden you turn into an adult and you're thrown into the real world and you have no idea what you're doing, you know, and I didn't have any guidance. I didn't have any desire. I was unteachable, uncoachable, like I was prideful, I was self-centered. All I cared about was Kyle. All I cared about was, you know, how I could, you know, party. You know, really, I think that partying entered my life, and I found really quickly that, man, I really could find a lot of those, you know, same type of things that sports gave me, and the same type of things, just like social acceptance and approval, you know, partying. And I also had a strange demeanor when I was sober, you know, when I was young, where I was just insecure. You know, I was afraid. I didn't really know why. I couldn't pinpoint it. You know, I really just got into a place where I was so lost, you know, and I had a lot of trauma. You know, I think that I put a lot of my identity into who I was dating. In growing up, I put in a high regard that I wanted to be married and have a family. I don't know why. I don't have any particular reason why that was so important to me. And I got into a relationship with a girl, and I swore in high school I wasn't going to date anybody, that I was just going to focus on playing sports and riding dirt bikes and going to the lake. I loved all those things, you know, and I basically met this girl, and I met her when I was a sophomore, and I knew when I met her that she was different, right? And that I really cared about her. And it took me 2 years to kind of let my guard down, because I knew, like, once I started dating, it was like totally different world, you know? And I started dating her, and it was going into my senior year in high school. And, you know, it was basically, we spent 2 years together, and she was telling me a lot of different things of like what she believed, and I was like, man, I'm right in line with that. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't figure out why her parents didn't like me. And telling you some background about her, she was from Croatia. She was German, and her dad was a doctor and escaped the war and came to America and did well. And her dad hated me, and I couldn't really figure out. And come to find out that it was just basically a deep religious belief and why they didn't accept me. And she went away after graduating high school to Germany for just a senior trip. And like, we talked every day. And then the day she was coming home, her dad hit me up and was like, or actually, the dad didn't hit me up. I hit the home up, and I said, hey, I'd love to come to the airport and pick up your daughter with you. And they hung up on me. And then all of a sudden, I got a phone call from this girl, and she just basically just cut the cord, said, I guess the entire time, that her parents, like, this girl's a doctor now. She really had aspirations to be a medical doctor from a young age for some reason. And they basically told her the whole time she was in Germany, like, if you do not leave Kyle, you're disowned, you're cut off, you have no relation with our family. And I didn't know all that. I didn't know that was going down. So I feel like that was like, my identity was so tied up into that. As soon as I lost that, I retracted and found drugs. And I've gone the medical route, you know, and so ultimately what I did then is I took the painkillers until they were gone as prescribed or whatever. Maybe I'd abuse them, maybe I wouldn't, but then if they were gone, it was all good. Like, I didn't think about it, you know. And that fast forward into, like, I don't know, 2007 was a tough year coming into the crash for me. 2007 and 8 was, I was an entrepreneur. I had a small pool service and repair business. You know, at this point, it took me about a year or so working in that industry to be able to step away and just work solely for myself. And it was like the perfect storm had happened. So I was dating the second girl I'd ever dated, and we had been dating for quite some time, and that's a whole nother story in itself that you could spend a lot of time on. You know, I was living with my best friend. We had grown up together. He played football at San Diego State, and he was about to get drafted into the NFL, and we were living together, all three of us. And then at the exact same time, my girlfriend, who was playing at a junior college in Phoenix area, she was All-American and got a soccer scholarship to Colorado, and my best friend got drafted to the Seahawks. So all at the same time, while simultaneously losing my business, I found OxyContin, you know? So it was like the perfect storm. The timing was perfect. I was vulnerable, and I found a substance that I literally will tell a quick story about the first time that I railed OxyContin, and it was that wasn't how I grew up. You know, doing drugs wasn't cool. Abusing drugs, sniffing drugs, like that wasn't me. You know, and And I came into my condo one day, and there was this kid that we had gone to high school with who was just he was a shady guy, you know, but he was likable and he was fun. And I remember still to this day, they had a hat on my countertop, and we were living at like 40th Street in the 101, right by Desert Ridge. And I came into my condo, and right now life is good. Like, I have things materially, you know, I have a nice place to live. My business is doing well for a young guy. And then all of a sudden, you know, all of these perfect storms happened. And I come into this apartment or this condo that I was living in and renting. And there was a line of Oxycontin underneath the hat. And the hook, line, and sinker, the line that got me was, hey, Kyle, I know that you really like Percocet. And I was like, hell yeah, I love Percocet. And they're like, well, if you like Percocet, you're gonna absolutely love this. And they pulled up the hat, and it was a line of OC. And then I was like, so it was I didn't grow up in faith, or I didn't really know what like having a God conscience was, or having a relationship with God. I didn't know what any of that stuff meant. But I had this overwhelming experience, and an audible voice that literally, it wasn't me, it wasn't anybody else. It was an audible voice that said, do not do this. And I rolled up to this line of Oxycontin and I railed it. And like literally the next words that came out of my mouth was, this will be the death of me. And I just pursued that, you know, and in the next course of years, it took me literally 10 years to really get traction with recovery, you know. And, you know, I had some periods of time, you know, kind of my story, I go to the wheels fall off, right? And I ended up, after this perfect storm had happened, knocking on the door of the Salvation Army in Phoenix, Arizona, where if you know anything about recovery in Phoenix or anywhere actually in the nation, like if you're going to the Salvation Army, you're not on a winning streak. Like you don't have insurance. Like everybody that's at the Salvation Army, like, let me backtrack. The Salvation Army is one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, and I say that with all certainty because it brought an experience. I was very sheltered growing up, you know, and it threw me into like, this is really life. This is real life. You know, 90% of the people that are in the Salvation, they're avoiding prison. They're coming out. They have got in trouble with substance abuse or alcohol or drugs in some fashion, and they're avoiding prison sentences basically for the most part. You know, there's 10% of the guys that are in there that are either younger or older, or all mixed in ages, that are like, man, I'm just beat up and I want to get sober. Well, I met this guy, and my mom had connected me to this guy. His name was Pastor Darian Bennett. And Pastor Darian Bennett, he came alongside of me. And this is the first man, like no man could get through to me. I say this with all certainty. Nobody could get through to me because I had the answer for everything, and I knew how to do everything. And like, this is just a bad run. Like, you know, I'll get out of this. I'll just, you know, my dad's telling me just like you're a smart kid, figure it out. And I wasn't, you know, and I was doing everything. I was doing everything that I could. And, you know, this man literally, like, he spoke the word of God and truth into me, and literally, I'd never really been around that, you know, and it penetrated me. Like, I literally knew this man was telling me the truth, and for some reason I listened, and he suggested that I'm not going to be able to do this on my own, that, you know, no matter how bad I wanted it was too much for me, and it was stronger than me, and I needed help. I needed the help of others, and I needed the help of God, more importantly. I was making the same mistake over and over, and I say now, like, I would just run into a brick wall, sure, brush myself up, run to the wall again, you know? And so after a year of the Salvation Army had left, it took me literally like 30 days to go back to drugs. And I literally was like, how the hell did this happen? You know, like, how the hell am I back here? And, you know, I spent the next, I don't know, 3 years, you know, trying to get sober, you know, and then fast forward to 2014, you know, I'm like where I'm at in life. Like, this is after I got into finance. I worked at, you know, a big Fortune 500 company. I made enough money where money was like adding fuel on the fire, and it literally just destroyed my entire life. Like, you would think money and things would help you, but it didn't do that at all. It made everything worse. And as far as the overall conclusion of that time, like, it was like literally a train wreck. You know, I was such a mess. I remember sitting on the patio of my house, and it was, I literally had everything that I wanted, thought that I would need at the Salvation Army to be happy, and I was gutlessly miserable. I was hopeless, and I'll be honest with you guys, like I wanted to die. I wanted to just end my life, and I didn't see a way out, and I couldn't find any happiness, contentment, relationships. You know, like I got this guy. Like I wanted that. I wanted to be known and to know others, and that's what I have in Fish, and we're going the same direction. You know. And he's my brother, and I love him, and there's not a thing in this world I wouldn't do for him. And, you know, as far as that, I wanted that, and I didn't know how to find it. In 2015, 16, I left and went to Portland, chasing everything that I could dream in my head that would be what would make me happy. And what I want to understand is this, just a common theme is like, it's all about Kyle. Even what I want to do that's good has selfish ambition. And at the end of the day, like, I literally just drove my life to the ground, and I got to a point where, you know, this is a really quick synopsis of a story, but I got to the point where, like, I was done. You know, I was done, and my life was a mess, and I was smoking heroin, and I again wanted the same thing over and over. I wanted to die. I couldn't live, and it wasn't money. It wasn't like any of those things at that time. It was just like, you know, my life is over, you know, and I'll kind of just stop that, you know, point, and that's just a quick little 10-minute spiel of life and where I've been, and, you know, here I am back in Arizona, and we'll talk later about just more things. So
yeah, well, you know, Kyle, I really relate to a lot of what you said, and one thing I picked up on when we were talking a little bit about the childhood is, you know, you went through that divorce that kind of rocked the core of what you thought your identity was in that all-American family and who you felt you were. And then later you kind of referenced you felt like a lot of that, the being that athlete and everything gave you that fulfillment. And then when that kind of ended, you were lost looking for something. And I think that really makes sense when you're following a chain of events. And I relate to it because I think a big part of what I went through in finding so much comfort in alcohol, for me, I definitely did drugs, but alcohol was really my thing. I think I felt so much comfort in finally feeling okay in my own skin and feeling, I don't know, some sort of strength, which I've never been like an athlete like you, but I'm sure there's a lot of power and feeling in that. But I wanted to touch a little bit on how you were talking about as you moved and you kind of went through all these different periods, whether you were successful in your career or not, and you're chasing these things. And it brings me back to some things we think we hear a lot in AA, where it's wherever you go, you follow you,
For sure.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, this is an inside job, correct? So we have to really work on ourselves, but I also relate to the fact that you referenced God. And for me, you know, again, with this podcast, you know, I want any listener to feel comfortable, anyone looking for help. There's multiple ways to get to recovery. But for me, you know, God was a big part of my recovery. And, you know, I was so bad at the end of my drinking, and it took constant prayer, constant AA, constant 90 and 90 just to get out of that loop you said, that vicious cycle, running into a brick wall and having the power of God. And I've been really blessed to have a lot of spiritual experiences. You know, I've had a lot of those moments where I too have felt him right there. And, you know, I work on that relationship because without him, I have nothing and I am not strong enough. So I really appreciate you sharing that and I want to, like you said, talk about more, but let's hear a little bit about your story.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. And I love hearing your story every time. I'm a little bit something different. With me, I'm 40 years old. I was born in Katy, Texas, suburban middle class neighborhood, about 20, 30 minutes outside of Houston, like half city, half country. I'm the oldest. I've got a younger brother by 2 years, younger sister by 5 years. And I grew up with a tennis ball racket in my hand. My dad was a big sports guy. Tennis was his thing. And like ever since like I was a little child, my first memories, I wasn't even walking yet. I was like in one of those like, I don't know, scooter strollers, right? And my dad had a racquetball racket made down to where I could swing it. So I was swinging cute before I could even walk. And, you know, that was my existence, right? Is there was always a ball I was chasing. And that kind of just goes right into my life. Like I always have to have a ball in front of me, right? And if I don't, I'm lost. And so I played competitive tennis. Like I think it was like 7, 8 years old. I won states, singles. And that was kind of my life. But also my life changed drastically when I was 8. My parents got divorced. They brought us down to the Fish and Ducks, to have a picnic, and it was like a school day, and we just thought it was cool. And, we had chicken and all kinds of stuff, and they laid it out, and my dad was like, "Hey guys, we're getting divorced." And I'm like, "Cool. Can I go feed the ducks?" And like, I had no idea what that meant. Like, this is 1988 or 87. And like divorce wasn't a thing in my neighborhood. Like I didn't know about it. It didn't register, but it registered for sure to my sister and my brother the next day when my dad didn't come home from work, right? He went and stayed with his father. And, right then and there, things changed drastically, right? My role, changed drastically in the home, and the dynamic of the home changed. From there, growing up, like I didn't have that leader in the home, that coach, that encourager. I didn't have that attention, and my behavior changed. My sister's behavior changed. I became more of a comforter to my sister. We're still very close to this day, and my dynamic with my mother definitely changed. Right, I found out a little bit later through an uncle that was drunk that my parents got divorced because my dad was paying too much attention to me and not enough attention to my brother and my sister. That whole head and heart thing, like the head knows that like you didn't cause it, but like the heart, like it hurt, right? And my behavior from then on out, like there was a depression. Like I can look back on it now, I was depressed. Like I was sleeping at school. I wasn't getting the love and the attention that I felt like I needed. I would stay up late watching like MASH on TV. Like it was just like, it was like weird, right? But like depression wasn't known about then. Like, I mean, or to the degree that it's like known now, like the mental health side of things. I was like not doing homework. I wasn't applying myself. Like I was quitting sports. My mom and I would just duke it out big time. And eventually I went and lived with my best friend and his parents my freshman year of high school. And there, like, I grew, right? But then my dad and my stepmom wanted me to come live with them, so I went and lived with them. And they didn't know what to do with me. My stepmom didn't know what to do with me. She's much younger than my dad. She didn't have kids, nor I feel like she wanted kids. So me being there was kind of an inconvenience. That's right when like my dad and my stepmom would just give me money to go find something to do. And, when you're 16, 17 years old, like that's awesome. Good. Like, well, I mean, yeah, it's not good, but like to me, it was awesome. Like I always had money to go do stuff. And, I still really never got in trouble. Like I never got in trouble with the law. I never did hard drugs. I started smoking a little bit of weed. I found comfort in that. And then I became like a stoner 24/7. Right. Yeah, like it was just, that's what I did. But by my senior year of high school, like, I was going to turn 18 in December, and my dad and my stepmom made me a deal. They were like, "Kyle, you apply yourself, you graduate, you get all A's. We're going to get you an apartment in December when you turn 18. I was like, bet, like, let's do this. I was like, I have a ball in front of me, right? And I excel whenever I have a ball in front of me. And so I'm excelling in that. I'm doing really well. And we're getting down to December. And my grandfather on my dad's side was older and wasn't in the best of health. And anyway, so I'm in school, and it's like the last week or two before that time. And I get one of those runners that comes in, and you need to call your dad. And I'm like, oh man, Papa died, but like, I'm just like devastated. And I'm like, oh, maybe not. And I'm walking down the hallway, and then another runner comes, and she's like, you need to call your stepmom immediately. And I'm like, oh man, he died. So I'm going in there with this overwhelming just fear that I'm going to hear this. And my dad, he's very, very passive, man, doesn't like confrontation at all. And he's like, what the fuck? And I'm like, what is going on? And he's just like screaming at me. He's like, why were the cops at the house? Why are you selling cocaine? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he was like, Kyle, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And so I don't even remember if I hung up on him or whatever. I just knew that I needed to get home. And so I took off to the house, and I get there, and what I had was like a little weed pipe and like I think like 2 old beers, but I wasn't even a drinker at that point. Like I had drank, don't get me wrong, but it was like the weed was my thing. And so I grab them, I run down to this drainage ditch, I get rid of them, And I get back to the house and I'm like, okay, what do I do now? And I was like, I had a Mustang at the time, and I used to get pulled over by the Western University police all the time, like right when I first got it. But then we became friends. So I'm like, I'm going to go down there. I was like, I'm going to go talk to these guys and talk to the chief and find out what's going on. So I go down there and they're like, he's like, bro, I was never at your house. She's like, nobody was at your house. I would know about this. And I'm like, my stepmom. And I'm like, so I go back and I'm so innocent at this time, like so innocent. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not too innocent, but my thought process,
fair amount of innocence.
fair amount of innocence. So
Okay.
like, my thought process of like to do something evil, right, was like, okay, so my stepmom had these cats and they love feeding them wet cat food. And so she had a trash can that's like sealed that was all the cans. And this was like a Friday. So, or maybe it was like a Thursday. Maybe it was like Thursday. So there's a lot of cans in there. So I went up there, I opened that trash can, I dumped it on their bed and I was like, yeah. I hopped in my car, like crying. And like, I take off to my girlfriend's house and she lived out in Katy. This time I was living in downtown Houston. And on the way, there was a place where I knew everybody bought beer. And I'd bought beer a couple of times before. And I went in there and I bought a 12-pack and I headed out there. And I got out into her little circle driveway and I started jamming Marilyn Manson. And that was like the first time that I drank to ease pain. And it worked. And her mom came out there and talked to me. And, you know, she came out there and talked to me. Make a long story short, went into the house and we're eating dinner with them. And they were like, hey, you can stay with us as long as you want. And I'm like, okay. And everything kind of calmed down. And then the phone rings and I get a call and it's my dad saying, where's her engagement ring and where's her gun? And I'm like, I literally had a nervous breakdown and, you know, I lost it. I was very emotional and, you know, I had it out with my mom and they were like telling me I needed to call my mom. And I'm like, I have no other options. Right? Like the police are going to get involved, like something's going to happen. And like, so there's something about a mom, like when you call them and like that they know if you're telling the truth. And like, you know, there was that no. And so she went really quickly to try to figure out what to do. And she was like, hey, have you done these drugs? And I was like, well, I smoked weed. And she's like, have you done anything else? I was like, no. And so we set up drug tests. She set up a lie detector test for me. And anyways, I ended up passing all those and we ended up sending that information over. It's one of those things, like, I know my family's probably going to watch this and I don't hold anything against you. Like that forgiveness is there. But I never got an apology for that ever to this day. And, you know, but at that time, this was like the world's against me, right? Like even my biggest enemy, my mom at the time, right? Like she's like now my ally, like, which is weird. And, you know, that was just kind of my experience growing up. And, you know, I barely graduate high school. I go off to community college. I'm like running a restaurant. Like I'm barely getting by, but I'm doing it. It's like I'm in a hamster wheel just because like I know I have to be in this hamster wheel, but I'm going really, really slow, right? And partying. Now I'm doing cocaine because like screw it. Like, you know, I've been told that I was doing it, so might as well. And anyways, I do this for like 2-3 years. And then 9/11 happens. And 9/11 happens, like I just know that I'm supposed to join the military. I go to my grandparents' house, ask them permission, join the military. I'm gone within a month of that. And once again, I have a ball in front of me. So you put a ball in front of me and like I perform. And, you know, I was made an example of a couple of times. And then I realized like you just listen to the guys above you. And as I'm in, like, you know, I'm single. I don't have any kids. You know, I'm not married. Like, you know, did tours to the desert because I was good at my job. And anyways, made really good friends. And one of my really good friends, he'd come back from the desert and like hadn't seen him in a while. And with friends you haven't seen in a while, it doesn't matter. You just click. And I had tickets to go to a baseball game, to take another one of my buddies to a Boston game. And I tell him, I'm like, hey, I got an extra ticket. Let's go. And he's like, all right, let's go. And anywho, that next day I tell him not to go out and drink. And he's like, no, I won't. And he doesn't answer the phone. Like, we get in the car to go down there. And like this whole time, there's something's on my heart about this guy. And anyways, I get a text message from him. I turn back around. He's like, no, keep going. So we go. And make a long story really short, there was multiple times that night where I felt like reaching out to him or going by his house, and I didn't. And the next day I find out that he'd committed murder on base, 2 people, and seriously wounded another. And when I found that out, when I drove and I saw the TV station cars outside of his house and all that, I lost it. This is my second breakdown. I get back, I literally freak out, and after that, there was multiple suicide attempts. There was just heavy drinking. It was just chaos. And I finally make my way back to Texas. I find the Manna House, which is a Christian 3-quarter house. And that was my first taste of God. In there, I had a man sit down with me, work with me through the 12 steps, gave countless hours of his life, thousands of hours. I had 2 other men that were pastors that spoke into my life. I went from a 20-something that knew everything to a 20-something that wanted to know everything. The big difference in my heart. And that propelled me to go to YWAM, which is Youth with a Mission. Went to missionary school for 2 years. Ended up being a full-time missionary over in Korea for 2 years, working at a Habitat for Humanity, 176 kids, working with North Korean refugees that had been, basically rescued out of the sex trade. Came back, and you would think I've done my duty, everything's right, and it's so easy to walk away from the program and get into a bad relationship that is I was a frog in a pot of boiling water, right? You throw him in when it's hot, he's jumping right out. But I just sat into this relationship knowing it was horrible for me. And, that's when my relapse started. That's when I quit talking to my sponsor. And 4 years later, I relapsed for 4 months. And then that 4 months was a vacation, honestly. It felt great because my life was hell. And after about 4 months of it, though, it was old. And I knew that there was something better for my life. And I moved out here, went to a treatment facility out here, started working the steps again. So I put myself underneath a sponsor, as well as putting myself underneath a Christian mentor out here. Dedicated 3 years to him, ended up doing 4. From that, I sponsor people. I'm a leader at church. Met him. I was speaking at my 4-year anniversary. He came through a mutual friend of ours, and we've been best friends ever since.
Yeah, we've been boys ever since. Literally, he still knows everything too.
That's true.
I just repeat what the men in front of me, have told me. But life is really, really good now. I had a lot of crappy stuff happen to me, and the only reason I tell these things is because crappy stuff happens to you, and it's all about how you handle the situation, right? You can still sit there and you can whine about it and make that poor me attitude, or you can just get over it and conquer the next thing that's in front of you.
Yeah.
So.
And I have a few things I want to say, but I think you're talking about being in that horrific relationship and it kind of putting you back in this space to whatever you went through the relapse. And more recently, I have been going through just a ton of stuff, and I've definitely, especially business-wise, and I had to really think about, I like to say I'm not perfect, right? And this is a daily program, and I had to think about, where does that drink lead you? Where does it take you? And that drink always makes it worse, and whatever it is, if it's not whatever your drug of choice is. So I like to kind of reference that, and I love hearing other stories, and then just hearing, the fact that you were so broken down, because these substances can take so much from us to where you don't even want to live anymore. You don't value the life that God has given you and the purpose that you have. I want to talk a little bit more about the whole stepmom thing. We don't have to dive too deep, but are you saying, because I don't feel like it had a crescent, that she basically just decided to set you up, and then so I'd like to know, have you guys repaired all that?
So forgiveness was a huge thing in my life, and and I have to just talk about this. So in the Christian walk, right? Jesus is our savior, that that we must come to him to cleanse us of us, because we're just evil at nature, right? And in that, and understanding that fully, in order to accept that, I had to forgive the people in my past, right? And my stepmom, she was young, she didn't know what she was doing, and that I forgave her in my heart, right? And I remember that first hug of going over there for Christmas, and it was the most awkward hug in the world. Like for me, it wasn't, right?
Yeah.
But for her, it was, and like there was a sadness in that hug because like she didn't know how to take it, like because like she knows what had happened, and she, even to this day, and she doesn't want to speak with me on the phone. It's not because she doesn't want to speak with me. She's the biggest encourager to my dad and stuff like that. But like there's that sense of guilt in her, and that sucks. And but I always have to tell the story, and it's not to rail on her or anything like that. It's like we all make mistakes. I made tons of mistakes. I still do every day, right? And the thing is like, in that, like, are we rectifying those like as soon as we know that we're making them, right? And I can do that on my part and not really holding other people to the standard that I can't uphold myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and my sponsor really likes to say, Roxy, I don't know if you guys have met her, but she's amazing at the fellowship. But she says, hurt people hurt people.
Oh, that's exactly right.
And so at the end of the day, I try to use that a lot. I think that's definitely something I need to work on, is better forgiveness. And it's like you can know it, but it is so freeing to your own self. So to carry around that weight. I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about, you had referenced that, Kyle, that your family was, a good family. Hey, you guys were poor, you had, a rough start. But I know now from what I've seen, you're close to your family, right?
I love my family. Yeah, I've got such a...
Imagining his mom like smoking burners, like that just
burning
I wanted to
ears,
laugh so loud because I can't picture it.
So tell us a little bit about that, because maybe some people are listening right now and they had a great family, but their family's not that happy with them. Like, how did you work on mending some of these relationships?
Like, my family was so broken, in, I don't know, early 90s to like, I have two older sisters, and, it's funny how God redeems, it's funny how life can get messy for everybody, and I think that especially in today's day and age, we want to present our perfect self, and in reality, like we're called to boast in our weakness, and the power of God is perfected through that. And I really believe that, because once I started living that model, I found myself connected, and I found all the things that I was looking for, and more importantly, I came into relationship with God, right? But my family, I think that I had a big part of, the redemption story of my family, and it's like the chaos, the destruction, the problems, my parents wanting to change me but not being able to, and then also my sisters, they had birthed new life, and they had children, and now today it's like I can introduce my girlfriend into my family, and she looks at them and she's like, your family's so healthy, and they're so caring and loving, and it's like, wow. But you see the end result, it's not the end result, I know it's a continuation, but and there's always things that can happen, but like my family has I think that addiction's a family disease, and it runs through all of us. And it's like a matter of perception, it's how we view things. And, at the end of the day, like I have such a beautiful family today. Like I've got a dad that he loves me, and that he tells me that he loves me, and that we have a relationship and we talk to each other, and it wasn't always like that, and I've got a mom that would do, like, she's an angel. She really is a gift from God. And she would also do anything for me. And as would I, and it's a gift to be able to have that reconciliation. But like what I want to really, convey is it's not like we had anything to do with it, right? It's just a matter of like, we were able to all in our own way in a family do, what we had to learn what we needed to get, and be able to, have a perception of life like it's okay to be in need. It's okay to not have everything. It's okay. It's learning to be content in all circumstances, right? The storm is there to strengthen me and give me broader shoulders, and to give me like relationships like Fish that are meaningful and valuable, and like in relationships like my girlfriend that are meaningful and valuable, and like that is, it literally is a gift, right? It's a gift.
And I think what I would like to have the listeners understand is that there is hope. And that because they get to see people like you, and that you have repaired some of those relationships, and you fix things, and you found newness on the other side of that. And it's funny that you kind of said, like, can you find the strength or the joy in the trials? And it's funny because just the other day I'm having some business issues, and Taylor works for me, and we were talking, and I'm doing weird stuff and making her laugh, and she's like, "It's real funny that you can be laughing right now." And I'm like, "Yeah, because what am I going to do if I don't, like, you got to find those moments or you're going to break." And then I wanted to speak to what you also said, where you talked about like God putting people in your life or in place. I feel like that happens to me left and right. And the craziest thing is we were driving here today to the recording studio, and I have a business attorney, and I had to engage him for some things that were the season that we're going through right now. And I was talking to him, and I'm like, okay, well, I got to get my headspace for my podcast. He's like, podcast? And then he starts saying he was doing a podcast. And then I have recently formed a relationship with Child Crisis Arizona, and there's a lot that we're going to be doing with them. And he's like, I'm a donator for them, and I know this person and that. And it was super cool. I was like, hopefully he's not going to bill me for this call now. No, I don't know. He probably will. But,
he probably will.
I don't know lawyers. But at the end of the day, those things happen. Yeah. And, so I have to have faith in this season, whatever season, that, God is going to put the right people in place, and he's going to guide me to what I need to do. And you know what? If I fall, it's exactly what you said I'm supposed to fall. I'm going to learn something from that. And it's how, quickly we can get back up. One question that I wanted to ask for you is, so I know that you said you had those down moments where you felt kind of in a deep darkness. And what do you do now? Like, life is still happening to you, right? And you're sober, and you've got how many years now?
6 years.
6. So, you're more double me. And so that's some experience. Like, what do you do now when life hits you hard? How are you not relapsing? How do you not go back?
So, I'll just share something
talk about what's been going on.
So I was just I just proposed in February, and in April I had to break it off. And for me, coming from a divorced family, coming from everything like that, marriage is number one, right? Sure. I'm 40 years old. I've been training my whole life to be the man that the woman of my dreams would be happy with, right? And so when I realized that I was taking the place of God in her heart, that I had to excuse myself. And there's a lot of selfishness that was just like, no, you can be there. You can help her. You can save her. You can, not that, anyways, without honoring her.
Yeah,
yes.
Sure.
And, I just had to see that God had a plan for me. He's had a plan for me my whole life, and that he's never let me down, that anything that I know that I need to do, that it's always been way better than I could possibly imagine, right? And that's been the story my whole life. And, finding a joy in a trial is not always easy. But during that time, what I did was I knew that I was going to have a lot more time. So I immediately called the rehab that I used to work for. And I was like, do y'all have an H&I that I can do? And, I went there and started giving an H&I to the detox. That turned into doubling the Christian men's meeting that I have at my house on Mondays. These guys just started coming on in.
That gave me goosebumps.
Yeah,
That's
and
really cool.
and now I'm sponsoring like 5 guys that are all fresh 5 guys, and like that's where my joy comes in. And it doesn't, honestly, my joy, it's taxing on me, right? But the joy is seeing the light turn on in their eyes, just like the light turned on for me when a man did that for me. And that's where I find the energy.
I would like to say something to that too. Like just talking about observing Fischer. Fischer's gone through a really tough time, and he's had joy, and he's been an encourager. And like life is like, you get to a certain point in life, and things aren't working out, right? You're like, why God, why me? And like, what I want everybody to really understand is like all that he did is the same stuff that he did at the beginning. It's always back to the basics, right? No matter where we are in life, when things go astray, like we just got to double down on the things that help us, and then through that process, like you've endured it and you've really walked forward, and like I'm proud of you. It's like you didn't see the left turn coming, but you took it, and then you just walked through it, and like it wasn't an easy one. And
yeah, and that was the whole thing, is like, for people that are watching, like you see us where we are today, right? When I left Texas, I was in the oil field and I had a $200,000 a year job, right? When I was first getting sober, I was washing dishes at a restaurant because you know what? I didn't need anything else in my life. Like I could go out and get a better job.
That's huge.
But I could do I mean, I needed to do something that was just going to pay the bills, that I didn't have to put any thought into, that I didn't need, any responsibility, anything that was going to take me away from my program. And then even when I moved up in the position, I was maintenance at the rehab. That was my first job, as maintenance. And then I went to lead. And then as my recovery grew and as my strength and character grew, so did my responsibilities and so did my pay. And like, for anybody that's out there that just really wants to go out there and have that killer job and you're on step one, like, I mean, yeah, it might work for some of you, but like, that's not what you need. What you need is concentrate on yourself. If you build yourself back better than the person that you were before, like, everything else is going to come.
Sure. Yeah, I'll say something to that too. Like, I think that we get sober, right? And then we believe that we're owed something, we're owed something. Or it's like, do you know who I am? Like what I've done, and like.
That's how I feel sometimes.
Yeah, but realistically, we get sober, and then all that pride comes back, right? We're beat to the ground. We get 30 days, 60 days. We get our
3 huts and a cot.
Yeah, right. We put a couple pounds back on, and like.
Couple pounds.
Yeah, we put like we get skinny. We get skinny,
and
I just lose so much weight. But like so I left California, had a really good job, and like I was in finance, and rates just plummeted, and the guys that I was around were killing it. I'm talking making tons of money, like driving Lambos now. Like those are the guys that I was sitting right next to. And I wasn't making that kind of money, and I don't pretend to, but like I had a set of skills, right? And I believed in myself. And I came to Arizona because God told me to. He said, come home. He said, go get involved with Pastor Darian and the men's at Trinity Church, and I'll take care of the rest.
Sure.
And I had some requests. I wanted a job that I could have where I could use my skills and be relationally connected, because I was working on the phone a lot in finance. And literally, I took a job, like Fish said, for $16 an hour, part-time as a back office tech. I couldn't even pay my bills. And like within 30 days, 60 days, like God promoted me, and I had the skills and the ability, and now I'm running a medical company, and it's like the job that I took at $16 an hour in small business, and like God knew there was a need and knew that that I had the abilities and skills to do it. Now I manage doctors, PAs, chiropractors, and we have a thriving business.
Yeah.
And we treat the root cause of symptom, which is backwards to the medical world. The medical world says, take medications, go have surgery, change nothing, don't eat healthy, don't exercise and diet, just take this medication and you'll be good. And especially in the addiction community, I get super passionate about this, because it's like, we go to doctors, we're looking for help, we're beat up, and we're like, I want help, give me help, please help me. And the solution is take this med, take this med, take this med. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with medications. I'm saying like you cannot solve a drug and alcohol problem with medications. It's a spiritual problem, and it's a heart problem.
And also, like, to the listeners, like, you're hearing him, he's running this medical company. This is the same guy that was at the Salvation Army.
Army, 2009.
I mean, that's what I think about. Towards the end of my drinking, I was probably, if I would have drank a few more weeks longer, I definitely think I would have lost my business. I heard it a lot in that process at the end of my drinking. And, I'm dry heaving over a toilet. It's horrible. You wouldn't have, if you could picture me now, like what I'm doing now, like that's what I want the listener to take away from this, is that, we go through these processes. And for us, I think all three of us, we've leaned on God, and God has been a big part of our recovery. And I want to hear like what you guys do right now. Like, before we part ways, I want the listeners to hear a little bit about like all the fun you guys have. Because what I saw is like I think there's men's baseball, or maybe it's co-ed.
We play softball.
Yeah. So whatever you guys, and you're both like super into outdoors. Yeah. He's always out
Fish
doing
likes
something. He's hunting. He's got a
I'm
dog.
leaving right after this.
Okay.
My truck's packed.
He's killed a bear.
Yeah.
Bull sharks in the Congo.
So So tell us a little bit about that and what recovery looks like on the positive side. Like, it is fun. I have fun all the time.
Life began when I got sober.
Yeah. So sober softball like saved me out here. Like I said, I need a ball in front of me, right? And like they started the team, and then pretty soon I was coach of it, and it was like the responsibility, but that got me to meet all these guys, right? And then I got onto a league on Tuesdays, and then Carp, it was so funny. So Carp and I met, right? And then I'm on this Tuesday night men's sober team, even though it's not a sober league. And all of a sudden, Carp shows up out there, and I'm like, it's like we were destined
Yeah.
to like.
Yeah, so the same day, I got invited to come play,
Mm-hmm.
brand new back to AZ in like 3 seconds sober.
Yeah.
And I got invited to go play in the softball league because my buddies from being here in the past invited me. And I go to hear him speak, and then right afterwards,
Yeah.
we're,
That's so
we're
funny,
going to
yeah.
play. We're going to
so
play
it's
together.
funny.
So, but I mean, from that, and then just like, I mean, he loves the boat, and like he bought a boat, so we've been out on that. We've been out wake surfing.
fun.
But like our biggest thing was going down to Mexico here recently, bro. Oh my God! So it's been a lifelong dream of mine to catch a marlin, and you know, we were going to do that for my bachelor party, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what we were
So you
going to
did
do.
it anyway.
And when all that happened, Carp was like,
Let's go.
He was like, you know what, Kyle? He was like, it doesn't have to be your bachelor party. Let's just go. And
Yeah.
I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, me and you, let's go. And I was like, all right, like, you know, and like, it was honestly the best trip of my life.
Yeah.
It was not only just the experience of being out there, but it's like two brothers that like, when all that was going on, like, I called Kyle and there was like no questions asked before, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like he was there for me the whole way. And it's very, very rare, like outside of the Army, and like I was in the military, I was in the Air Force, and outside of the military, because like your lives are in each other's hands,
Mm-hmm.
but like there's a stronger bond here. There's like we've done soul surgery together,
Mm-hmm.
and we know exactly where each other's coming from. And like in that bond, like going on that trip with him and seeing him surf out there and doing what he loves the most,
Mm-hmm.
right? Him seeing me catch that fish. I mean, he loves fishing, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong.
we caught marlin at the exact same time.
Yeah, when we had
That's
a double
so
hook
weird,
up,
too.
and
Double
like
hook, both hook, it was bad.
and then like our surf instructor was a pastor.
Oh,
like
wow.
it's
So we
just all this
connected.
random
So cool,
stuff,
yeah.
but like doing stuff like that together as brothers and going out there and having fun, and you know, sometimes it's about one upping each other, but most of the time it's just about
In his
going
eyes,
out
not
and
mine.
having
Good
fun.
competitiveness.
Yeah, in my eyes,
In his
right?
eyes, not mine.
But you know, these are the joys
Yeah.
of sobriety. It's like you can actually go out and have fun, and it's like our Facebook stories and Instagram stories, like we're both not huge onto it,
Yeah.
but it's like when we're posting these things, this is our life now. This
Yeah.
is really our lives. Like we really have fun at what we're doing. Like I said, I'm getting ready to go on an elk hunt right now. Right
Yeah.
after we leave here, I'm gone for 4 days elk hunting.
Nice.
And it's just being out in the woods and just knowing that like I don't need anything else to make me happy. Like I wouldn't want it because like I'm gonna wake up with a little bit of a hangover and then I'm not gonna want to go hunt in the morning.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as
life's good.
Yeah, all of the different things. Like one thing that's been different for me is the fun, the stuff, the trips, the money. I mean, it's not like we're wealthy guys. You know, we're not going without. You know, but what I want you to really convey is that money, fun, trips, you know, all that was never the target.
No,
you know,
No.
it was never the target.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that my younger self was the target, and it never. I always missed. I could never get traction. You know, it was literally getting involved where God is working, and literally listening, and not pretending like that I knew everything. You know, I don't have all the answers, and I literally take the approach like I know nothing.
Yeah.
I know absolutely nothing, and I need help. I need help. I need guys. I need people in relationship with, and I need people that are going the same direction that God has me going, right?
The one that got me to even question God, it was like God did not create you for you, but you for him and his purposes. And until you understand that, you will never know happiness. So that hit me at my core to where I'd been told who God was my whole life, but I'd never researched him on my own. And when I started doing that, I started to understand the true meaning of life, right? Because I put my all into something. And the other one was, I heard this and this just struck my heart. It was like, Kyle, you want to know what your purpose is in life? He was like, be the person you needed growing up.
Amen.
And like, as long as I'm that guy today, right? Everything in my life just falls into place. And that goes into saying is like, you know, like when I was just at like one of the most down, if not the most downtime of my whole life, like this past April, it was like immediately I had to sit there and help another human. Right. Because the moment I'm in that place, like there is no wanting to drink. There is no wanting to harm yourself. There is no wanting to anything, right? It's seeing somebody else that's hurting and helping them and just giving them that leg up in life.
That's absolutely true. For me too, you talked a little bit about living in God's purpose, and that is what's defining for me right now. And I think what makes me feel okay even when things are in chaos and going wrong, because I have to know that I can't be so presumptuous to think I have the plan, that it's his plan, right? And he gives us the tools that we need. And sometimes I don't always know the direction. And, I had this like kind of chuckle to myself the other day because I was sitting there and I was thinking like, what must he think sometimes? Like he is giving you all these things and you're freaked out and you need something to happen now, or you want this or you want that. And he's thinking, coming down the chute in 6 months, 9 months, I've got this in store for you. I've got that. This girl can't wait, like calm down. And you just almost have to put it in those realistic perspectives, I think. But what I wanted the listeners to see is two amazing guys full of, some good God spirit as well as recovery, and that there is so much more fun out there. And we are running out of time. So I'm just going to close with, as the listeners, I'm calling you my bright lights in this season. I want you to know that there's so much fun out there for you, that there's strength on the other side of whatever pain or weakness that you're feeling. And I want to thank both you, Kyles, for being on this episode and joining us today. And if you want to find them, you can feel free to share your social media handles. We'll be tagging you as well.
I have no idea what mine is.
But we'll tag you and you'll be able to find them because they are entertaining. And if you want to follow us and find out more about Abuse Recovery Success, you can find us at abuserecoverysuccess.com. You can follow me on Instagram or TikTok at April_the_Hills, or see some of our amazing episodes on YouTube under April Hill. Thanks and have a wonderful and blessed day.